Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to another episode of the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have Dr. Michael Neal, who is an optometrist, but ironically this week he can't see very straight because he just finished the Boston Marathon on Monday. So Dr. Neal has taken kind of a little bit of a turn and started a business about hiring people in the healthcare world. So we're going to find out today all the amazing things that he has learned about how we hire and retain people. Dr. Neal, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to kick it over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. What a terrific intro. By the way, just call me Mike. That's great. So intro-wise, I'm a practicing optometrist in rural Pennsylvania. And what the heck does an eye doctor have to tell you about hiring or retaining people? Well, I guess you have to stay tuned to see if there's anything to that. But I started Build My Team back in 2018. That's my company that helps us find the amazing, super talented people for healthcare practices and small businesses around the country. On a personal level, two wonderful boys, ages 11 and 13. I like to refer to them as Al Capone and his henchmen because that is spot on accurate if you knew our two kids. And live in rural Pennsylvania in the middle of the Poconos.
Awesome. Well, we are so happy to have you. And I can't help but share, you said Al Capone and his henchmen. When I was a kid, I had a great Uncle Bill. And Uncle Bill often talked about his time with Al Capone in the, back in the day. And everybody kind of thought Uncle Bill maybe had lost his marbles, to be quite honest about it. And we come to find out many years later, but Uncle Bill and his family lived in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, and they have a lot of trains there. And during the Depression, his father said, "Bill, you're the oldest." And he said, "We can't afford to feed all the kids. So you're either going to have to go out and get a job or go find somewhere else to stay." He hopped a train, ended up in Chicago, and actually ended up being a getaway driver for Al Capone and his men.
Oh my goodness.
So more to that story, but we won't digress there, but kind of fascinating.
Wow.
So you hit the nail right on the head. I've been wondering all morning what an optometrist is going to tell me about hiring people. But at what moment, I guess is probably one of my biggest questions, at what moment did you say, "Hey, I think I'm onto something here and I should start another business"?
Well, the moment came from how many problems we had in hiring in the practice. We were hiring people using resumes and the standard interview process, just like everybody else does their hiring. And what ended up happening is we were not able to find high performers using that method. We were unable to determine if a person was in the interview telling us what we wanted to hear, if they were padding their resumes, making stuff up, you name it. And that was back in 2018. If you've done any hiring lately, those were the good old days relative to where we're at now.
Yeah.
With how interviews go and what resumes look like. But the turning point for us was that I was in an executive coaching organization at the time. They had kind of set me on a path of a potential different way to hire people. And that was using assessments that determined what people were naturally good at, their natural strengths and talents, instead of asking them that or floating that balloon in a resume and then having them tell you what you want to hear, that type of thing. So that grew into a new way of hiring for the practice. We had all kinds of, it was 3 steps forward, 2.9 steps back for a while. But we incorporated all the feedback, and stuff just got better and better and better. So to answer your question, finally, the turning point was when my friends who had other healthcare practices started to take note, and they wanted that process done for them. And that turned into a company. Now we're in over 40 states in the US plus Canada. We hire in over 10 different healthcare professions, generally for private practices of any type, and then also some other businesses as well.
So I am a disc consultant and utilize that in my, in my business, and not only with businesses. We have delved a little bit into what we have to offer is the Maxwell method of disc for students. And I'm kind of curious, with everything you've learned, I often tell young people that it's very important that they understand a little bit about themselves, what their natural traits are, what their personality is from their angle, so that they're not out applying for a job that doesn't fit them. And how many people have you run into over the years, adults that maybe are great people for some job, but have been applying for the wrong jobs over a period of time? How many people don't maybe recognize that they're in the wrong career path?
I started thinking along the lines of the majority, but the real answer is the vast majority of people have no clue what they're good at. They got some ideas, but they really don't have any depth to what they're outstanding at. And boy, is that unfortunate. I mean, imagine a world where you'd show up for work, you'd love what you do all day long, you can't get enough of it, you go home energized, your family loves the person you are as soon as you walk in the door. And you wake up the next morning just raring to go again. That's what happens when you're working in a position that asks you to be yourself all day long and utilize those natural strengths and talents. It's nothing short of magic. And I'm not hyping that. The listeners who love what they do, that's how they feel over the course of the day. And so the average person, well, I'll tell you, in our practice, we have an exact statistic on that. When people apply for one of two jobs, we switch them over half the time to the other job, because based upon their strengths and talents, they're a better fit for the other job than what they thought they were.
Wow. So 50% of people are applying for the wrong job.
In a tiny little niche, in a microcosm of healthcare, that is an almost exact statistic. I would keep in mind they already applied in healthcare, so it's a niche within a niche. I would extrapolate that to just general positions where folks just apply because of external circumstances. I mean, I heard a story from somebody yesterday. They applied because they were walking down the road past a job ad. They looked inside and there were a bunch of cute girls standing in the office. That's why he applied, and that's how he got to be a physical therapist.
Wow.
That's his story. And it's such a funny story because it's almost comical. And then you think, how many people have some kind of completely unrelated reason for applying for a job? And the answer, I think, is a lot more than we realize.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And it to me, it points back to, as well, I think it points back to, we need to do a better job of making sure our middle school and high school students across the world are getting an idea of what they're good at, what maybe they want to do. In workforce development, I've often said that, a typical high school student coming out of high school is going to pick maybe one of 5 or 6 pathways, and that happens to be the 5 or 6 things that they've heard about in their short lives thus far. Oftentimes It's mom, dad, uncle, brother, whoever's around them, but they're going to pick one of those paths, and more than likely, out of the millions of jobs and careers that are available, that's probably not the right path for them. So I find that very interesting. So tell us a little bit about the process, and specifically, I'm curious about, do you still take in a standard resume to start this process off, or do you start somewhere different?
Well, the resume is part of the application process. However, our software is completely automated for this at about a 99% level. And what I mean by that is the resume is not looked at by a human at all for almost all of the candidates. The way we do it is for our clients is we write the job description. This is after a free consultation call with the client, obviously. We write the job description. We publish it to over 20 different job boards. Those candidates start applying immediately. They get a text on their cell phone from the client's business / practice, whatever it might be. And this is all done on the back end by us. The text invites them to apply for take the assessment process, and is done in this wonderful language that's been tested over a couple 100,000 times. That's how tight the split testing is for us. They take it. Some of them don't. About half of them don't do a darn thing. They don't lift a finger. They just go back to their Xbox game on the couch because we just asked them to do something. And the ones that do take the assessments, they start to get hooked in a real big hurry, because our client is so methodical and deliberate about who they're hiring. That alone is magnetic for high performers.
Okay.
And so these people go through the process. It takes about 10, 15 minutes, depending on the person. And at the end of that process, we know more about them on almost all circumstances than what they do about themselves in terms of their natural strengths and talents. So our software will give a thumbs up for the ones that have an incredibly tight fit for the job description. Imagine matching one algorithm with, or the algorithm matches requirements versus what the candidate possesses in terms of the strengths and talents. And then we send them, those finalists, a video interview. And the video interview, it's reviewed by our team. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter if they're black, white, pink, green, brown, purple, whatever. Our team reviews it, and we see if they would represent the client properly. We see how they're answering the questions. How they answer the questions is so much more telling than what they say. It's remarkable how that works. And at the end, we recommend the top candidates, top couple A players, the high performers to our clients to move forward with. And that's generally the process. In terms of looking at resumes, if we have a high performer who gets that magic thumbs up from our software, one of our team members looks at a resume. We only look at the resume to see if they have experience in the domain.
Okay.
Otherwise, we don't look. So that, yeah.
Well, what I was curious about, those people, the 30-year-old that has 25 years of experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Probably isn't real. Now, does it also take in, for thinking about that from an experience standpoint, I've said over the years, there's a big difference between somebody that has 10 years of experience and someone that has 10 one-year experiences. So how do you kind of filter out those people that maybe have had 10 one-year experiences opposed to the person that has 10 years of experience? Is that all done through the assessment?
The answer to that is it's immaterial to our process for almost everybody. And I'll tell you why. The 10 one-year experiences, there can be people who are just train wrecks. That's the caveat I'll say right out of the gate. But the vast majority of those folks in the short-term positions have no idea what they're good at, and they're doing the life choice trial and error method of trying to find what they're good at by going from one job to another to another. The person with 10 years of experience in a position, hey, if they're fantastic at it and they also get approved by our software process, that can be a unicorn. That's not only a unicorn, but the exact color unicorn that you want with the exact shade, etc. The vast majority of the time, the experience is immaterial to our process. The reason being is that we measure how fast people learn. We're measuring their speed of learning. These people learn lickety-split by design. The ones that get recommended to the practice learn very quickly. You do not have to spoon feed them. You can resign from your position as a professional cat herder, which so many business owners are used to. You don't have to do that with these people. In fact, if you do that, they're not interested in working for somebody like that. So when people hire for experience, it's usually because they think that they're going to shortcut the time it takes to get that person to be productive. When you have licensed positions, so for example, a doctor or certain things in healthcare that are licensed, there's no way around that. When you're looking for unlicensed positions, we have proven without any question that virtually always, I'm talking well over 98, 99% of the time, experience is detrimental relative to bringing somebody in new who doesn't have bad habits, does not have to be untrained. Look, when was the last time you successfully untrained a human to do something?
Never.
Please let me know.
Never.
Exactly. Like, I could sit and wait for eternity for you to untrain a person. In healthcare, there's a really interesting way to see that. Well, we used to do it this way at Dr. Jones's practice. Yeah, but we just bought Dr. Jones's practice. Dr. Jones's practice was doing terrible. We acquired Dr. Jones's practice because he was doing terrible. We're not doing terrible. Don't bring the terrible things that Dr. Jones's practice was doing to our practice. That type of approach. And that's a bit of an extreme example, but when you have these people that just learn lickety-split, they're up and running in 2 weeks, you don't want to go back to the old way.
Absolutely. So I think one of the big questions out of people listening right now is, all right, some of this is starting to make sense. Are there opportunities for similar approaches in other industries, or does this only work in healthcare?
No, it works anywhere, because anywhere that you're not looking, you don't have the requirement for experience, and you're not looking for licensed positions. Where it's really, really strong is where you are looking for the same type of performer in a position over and over again. So I'll give you an example. When you're looking for a technician to help a doctor with patients, that's a type of person. It requires very specific strengths and talents. It doesn't matter if you're in eye care, dentistry, chiropractic, general medicine. You're interacting with patients. You have all those requirements. There's a couple things you need to learn. That's fine. None of that stuff is a showstopper in any way. It's very straightforward. So you're looking at maybe, I'd say, well over 90% similarity between the professions. Well, what happens if you're looking for folks like nannies, or if you're looking for people very specific to an industry where you know exactly what success looks like? Well, in our case, you tell us exactly what success looks like. We define it on our back end. We start the process, and through a feedback loop with our clients, we just very, very rapidly iterate. And what you end up with is an automated process that is incredibly predictable, incredibly effective at producing the same results over and over again.
So from my leadership background, what just popped into my mind is a scenario. Let's say you're in rural Pennsylvania, as am I. Mm-hmm. So sometimes in rural areas, you may have a successful business that has been successful for years, but it might be successful because it's the only one. Maybe it has a toxic environment. So if I'm hearing you correct, you're taking what that client's idea of success is, feeding that into the back end of your system, and then that helps to filter out and find the right candidate. So even in that case, I guess is my question, if it's a successful business with, from my standpoint as a leadership person, maybe bad leadership, can we still find the person that fits their idea of success, which might not be my idea of success? Is that how it's tailored? And then lastly, this kind of the second part of the question is, what about a business that wants to change? New owner, new CEO comes in and they want to change. How would that work through this system?
So first of all, I would say the feedback loop that we have with the candidates and the clients is remarkably effective at tightening up the type of people that we recommend. That's how we did it for our practice. That's how we've done it for other practices. And you do this over and over again, and it gets very straightforward to predict what an outcome will be prior to starting.
Yep.
Not exactly, but you get pretty good at it. And so in terms of somebody who wants to change, well, we change the inputs into our process. And by definition and naturally, the outputs change as well. We just make sure we have a really nice, tight feedback loop.
Got it.
It's not rocket science. It is methodical. It does require a very quick communication, but it works.
The candidates that go through the assessment but don't get picked, do they get any feedback or access to their assessment?
Yeah, they sure do. And we do that because it's the right thing to do. They've given a time commitment, and what they get out of it is a better understanding of themselves. So what we've had happen, in fact, when we have areas where clients are geographically similar-ish, which happens all the time in, let's say, rural Pennsylvania, we have a dental practice down the road from like 10, 20 minutes away from our eye care practice, et cetera, et cetera. So somebody applies for one, let's say they're not a really great fit for that one practice, but they would be a great fit for an open position at another practice, we switch.
Got it.
Yeah, there's no poaching from practices. It's the people that don't make the cut, if they still have a terrific, like if they would be approved for the other practice, terrific. And that happens regularly.
So if I'm understanding correctly, like for you and what you're doing as you're bringing candidates in where it makes sense in a geographical area, a candidate that doesn't make the cut for A, if they are a good fit for B, your system will tell you that, and you can switch them so that they can go look at that opportunity. So it's almost, how long do you keep those candidates that didn't make it? How long do they stay in the system? But it sounds like a brilliant idea of kind of creating a pipeline. Is there ever a time where a client comes to you and says, this is the position I need to fill? You do all your work and it says, hey, there's already 5 people in the system that would be a good fit. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Well, the way we do things is we start every position from scratch. What we just talked about is that there are sometimes some people who would be considered for a new position that is very close time-wise. Maybe a new position went live a couple days later, then we would consider that. But most people move on to other positions. So if this was something that happened a month or 2 months later, they're already on to another position.
Gotcha. So in today's world, here in our section of Pennsylvania, as well as Western Maryland, we know by looking at the demographic information that we're getting ready to go through a historic shift. You mentioned 2018 when you started was the good old days, and it from a standpoint of the number of qualified individuals available for any given position, that number is going down and going to continue to go down for the next few years because we're not producing people fast enough to replace those that are retiring and the positions that are becoming open. How do you guys handle that, and what changes maybe will you be looking at into the future as that continues to become more competitive?
Yeah, we have a wildly effective way to deal with it. And what I hear from all kinds of folks, usually before they become clients, is, oh, all the good people are gone. I can't find anybody good, this, that. Like, you've heard all of those. Well, in part, it's true because they're not looking in the right spots. So if you go through the traditional way of hiring, you're right. You're not going to find a whole bunch of people. Our approach, remember, doesn't require experience. So one of the best secretaries we had at our practice used to work at the deli at the grocery store. Now, why was she at the deli? Because she needed a job. She didn't know. They were like, that place is always hiring. She came to our practice. I asked her if it was stressful, and she just laughed. She said, nobody's throwing their ham in my face today. And I paused and I reflected on that for far longer than one would think, and thought, it's all relative. It's all relative completely. If you're holding a road sign in 90-degree heat, 90% humidity, and somebody asks you to move into an office and work within your strengths and talents, that's the best day you've had in a long, long time.
Absolutely.
It's all relative.
Yes. Now, I hadn't intended on, a question just came to mind. I hadn't really intended on going this direction, but you, in your own practice, you came up with a problem. You were not able to find good qualified people for the positions. And so the first question, which is a pretty simple one, I'm envisioning that you're just the type of person that said, this shouldn't be this difficult. I'm going to continue to search until I figure out a way to make this easier. Is that accurate?
I don't know that I would characterize it as such per se. I would say that I got extraordinarily frustrated with how we were hiring because we got the same results over and over again.
Yep.
Terrible. And then we switched to the approach we're using now, that Build My Team uses for our clients as well. And we get extremely reliable, totally different results. The real problem now that, we've been able to have terrific success with hiring and look backwards and kind of do that armchair quarterbacking analysis is that we were strictly following a process that was completely flawed.
Yep.
That old adage, was it maybe Covey who said it? You lean your ladder up against the wall, climb it as fast as you can. And when you get to the top, you realize your ladder's leaned up against the wrong wall.
Yes.
That's us. That's what we did. So we moved the ladder.
And how many times, I mean, I'm wondering, did you move the ladder a few times before you found the right wall?
Well, the ladder fell a couple times. Nobody was injured on the job.
But you kept going, right?
We had to solve the problem because it was catastrophic. You have a small business that has religiously reliable turnover. You never get off the ground.
Yep.
You are a business owner trying to fly with your feet in concrete boots. Good luck. All the hope and good wishes are going to get you nowhere. You have to change your process. And it's not that we didn't want to do that, as we didn't know what to change it to.
Yes. And so I'm making a connecting dot here because it just kind of hit me. You just finished the Boston Marathon. You said you've run several marathons. 5, I think, is what, if I heard you correctly. Have you ever had a day when you went out for that long run that you really didn't want to do it?
Yeah. Most of them. That's running in a lot of ways. Do I hate it? No. Do I get excited about, for the marathon block, it was 2 Sundays were 22-mile runs. I do those on a treadmill. I have a really, really nice treadmill with an Apple TV in front of it. It's how I can turn my brain off and just run for hours. But no, I don't get supremely excited about doing that. What I get really excited about is the outcome.
Yep.
I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I got a couple birthdays under my belt. I have ample energy to keep up with an 11 and 13-year-old and do physically virtually anything I want. That's the outcome that makes it worth it. The other way to look at it is nobody wants to see how the sausage is made. Well, I love sausage. Love the taste. It's delicious. But as far as how it's made, that's something that you just got to get through in order to have the sausage.
Yep. And so I find it interesting, and I've noticed this in a few interviews and discussions that I've had. But one of the things that runners all have in common, and I think I mentioned before the interview, my wife is a runner, and so one of the things that I have noticed is runners have the ability, because they have had the completion of something that almost seems impossible to most, and so I find it interesting that as well you had what most people would have just looked at as a natural problem with having an optometry practice in rural Pennsylvania, and you just have to live with it. And you said, no, we're gonna move the ladder around to some different walls, and it might fall down, but we're gonna keep going. And I think it's valuable because we can accomplish and solve any problem that we want to solve in our businesses. And that's what this podcast in general is about, is getting different people's viewpoints. But I think it's so awesome when people realize that, anything they can overcome. And if we study, going back to World War II and study the Jews that were in concentration camps and some of the things that they had to overcome, that same thing exists. So once you run that marathon and, you complete it, now you have it in your mind that you can really do just about anything, even if it takes a little bit of time. So it seems like a lot of people give up is what I'm really trying to say. Keeping it in running terms, they give up at the 3rd mile. And a true runner doesn't give up, and they know mile 22 and 23 are going to be the toughest, but you keep going until you get to that finish line. And that's what you did with your business.
I think that's really kind of you to say. And I think that in my particular case, there's really, that really makes me think of a couple of things. One, what happens if it works? Right? I mean, that's a question entrepreneurs they can be so terrified by. Not what happens if it doesn't work. Everybody thinks about that. What happens if it does?
Yep.
Well, in my particular case, what happens if we can solve this hiring problem? Our practice first of all, our stress level goes from unimaginable to barely there. That big of a difference. And I'm not exaggerating. That's exactly what happened. And then you take a look at what else, there's always the law of unintended consequences when you're in a problem solving in an entrepreneur land. So you solve this problem. Well, it literally translated to a better relationship for us, my wife and I, with our kids. How can solving a work problem like that, there's all kinds of crazy things that come out of this stuff. And, a lot of it just comes down to testing yourself as well. So I'll give you another running example. Marathons, I can do those. I'm not the world's fastest. I'm not the world's slowest, but I wanted to try an extreme challenge. And I tried running, it was a 12-hour timed event, see how far I could go in 12 hours. And I did 61 miles in 12 hours.
Wow.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it again, but I wanted to see what would happen. And the point I'm trying to make is virtually like along with our candidates that don't know what they're good at, strength and talent wise, most folks listening to this have no idea what they're capable of. You just flat out don't know what you're capable of. And I don't say that in a negative way. I say that in an exceptionally positive way. If you really, really want to find out, take your number one biggest problem that you have in your business or your life and obsess about solving it until you've got something that works. You can back off then and optimize it, but really make sure it works incredibly well. And in my particular case, that's what we did. And it just knocked so many things off of the shelf in terms of stress. That was the one lever. What's that old adage? The one lever that moves 100 things or whatever it might be. I don't know the quote. But that's what it was for us. And the business took off. The measurable way is the gross income went up by over 50%, and the net income almost tripled. Sounds too good to be true. I was called out by that on a podcast, on a financial podcast once. I showed the guy the tax returns after the podcast.
Yep.
It's really, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. It's the team, your team. If you're in business and you want to have any level of success, get the absolute best people you possibly can. You get them onto the bus. You get them in the right seats on the bus. You make sure you got yourself a phenomenal bus driver, and then you draw the map and put the guardrails on the road. And then you get the heck out of their way and let them do their thing. That's what I learned the hard way over and over again. And that's where we're at now. The results will blow your mind.
I think one thing very important that you just hit on, and I think it was Jim Collins in Good to Great that said, get the right people on the bus, then figure out where the bus is going to go. You got a general idea. I mean, you have a business, you have an optometry practice. You're not going to start filling teeth. At least we hope not. I did know a dentist that kind of became a brain surgeon, but he just made a slip. He was getting old. I'm kidding. But I think that's an important piece. Is it's to your point. It's so important that you get the right people, and then you can figure out where you're going to go ultimately. With that.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of like venture capitalists and such, they always talk about investing in the team first, because you can have a terrific idea with a team that doesn't know what they're doing and it goes nowhere. You can't execute. You have a good to great idea. Thanks, Jim Collins, with a team that can execute incredibly well. Well, that's where your money's to be made on the investment side of things.
Yep. So as we're coming to a close, one thing I did want to end the running topic on something a little bit comical, but for me, running became something that I realized that if I wanted to keep up with my wife, I would have to chase after her. So I still continually to this day can say that I chase after my wife occasionally, and that's because she's faster than I am. But
good for her.
As we, as we come to a close at every episode, I ask my guests 3 questions. Kind of rapid fire. The first question is, if we could magically get all of the school administrators from across the United States sitting in front of us, what is one piece of advice that you would give them of something they could add or include in a student's school career that would help to turn out better leaders and better workers into the future?
Well, I mean, this is obviously going to sound self-serving, but to measure what the kids' strengths and talents are, and then connect them, either connect them with potential careers or just provide that information to them and say something along the lines of, go expand on these.
That's awesome.
You're not going to achieve super success in life by really having amazing weaknesses. It doesn't work that way. You have to have mind-blowing strengths and double, triple, quadruple down on those, and that's where you provide the value to the world that that you're looking for.
I'm laughing. John Maxwell often says, I don't know anybody that has slid downhill to success. Kind of
That's
the
a great
same
line.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second question is, what has been your go-to book over the years that you have continually been able to pull out and get good insights out of?
Oh, boy. I'd say, now this is, the title's financial in nature. It most certainly is not as you go through it, but it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That was written, I think, in 1920 something. I don't know how many times I've read that, but it is the foundational self-help business book that so many of the current modern business books are based on, intentionally or not. That's a book by a guy who studied all of the titans at the time, Rockefeller, Carnegie, all of those folks. It was a 20-year journey. I can't remember who paid him to do that, but one of them did. And he consolidated their wisdom into essentially one book.
Awesome.
It's remarkable. Yeah.
Last question is, in today's ever-changing world of technology, what is your favorite and most useful piece of technology today?
Number one, I'd say AirPods. They allow me to interact with an entirely additional world without fear of bothering people or having confidentiality, the rest of it. The iPhone is spectacular, and this is a total plug for self-driving cars. I will keep the brand out of it, but that technology has changed my life and given me a couple hours a day back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, this has been wonderful. Where can people find out more about Build My Team and connect with you if they want to engage, if they have a healthcare practice and are looking at hiring?
Yeah, thank you. Buildmyteam.com. Very straightforward. Schedule a consultation with one of our team members and just be completely and utterly honest with the struggles that you're having, and we will determine the best path forward to help you.
Awesome. Mike, this has just been, I think, a pleasurable conversation. I think, the idea of looking at hiring for everybody, looking at hiring in a different manner is something that we all need to think about. And hopefully maybe we can have you back on in the future and we can maybe unpack a little bit more of it.
That would be fun. You're great to talk with. I absolutely loved our conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you again. And for our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our past episodes. And don't forget to follow us so you get alerts whenever we get new episodes coming out. Until next time, we appreciate you.